35% of baby boomers are evangelical Christians. But even with 35% evangelical Christians, there's been an epidemic of morally corrupt TV, films, and gaming, an increasingly perverted music industry, a porn invasion on the internet, the rise of civil promotion of homosexuality and gay marriage. We've seen increased divorce rates and suicide rates. We've seen removal of the 10 Commandments from the courthouses and from other public places. We've seen religious symbols and removed from the public sector, removal of religion from the schools. And the sad part is that this millennial generation, which are the Generation Y as they're called, were born in the late 70s and go all the way over to the early 2000s. And they comprise 35% of the population. But if the current trend holds true, only 4% will be evangelical Christians in that generation. So just like the baby boomers, the millennials are moving into adulthood or already in adulthood. They will dictate the future of this nation and the church. So can you imagine what only 4% evangelical Christians may look like? We're already seeing it. We're already seeing the effects. There's legalized euthanasia in some of the countries in Europe. We've seen pastors arrested for preaching the biblical perspective on homosexuality. Scotland has an age 14 consenting age for sex. And what will happen to missions around the world? You know, more millennials were born in 1989 than in any other year. They're now 22 years old, and every year, 4 million millennials turn age 21. And by age 21, the majority have already formed a personal beliefs that they will take to the grave. So why is that important? It's important because 77% of people come to Christ before age 21. And if a person is not reached before they become age 21, there's a slim chance that they will ever know Christ. And we have failed much of this generation, and we can't afford to fail in the future. If we can't capture the hearts of this generation for Christ, history will be forever changed. What we do or what we don't do is going to dictate the next 50 to 70 years, if we're still here, of American and church history. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that the enemy has invaded every aspect of these teenagers' lives. TVs and games filled with foul language, porn images, and violence. If we combine TV and video games and video movies, the average teenager spends 35 to 55 hours per week in front of a screen. Let's add the phone into that. It's probably more. You know, that's a full-time job. The most watched teen network is MTV. There's 3,000 soft porn images broadcasted every single week on that channel. So how has all this affected this generation? The first age of sex is less than 16 years old in a relationship that lasts less than 4 months. 4 out of 5 teenagers are infected with a sexually transmitted disease. Every year, 1 million teenagers become pregnant. Out of that, more than 1/3 of teenage pregnancies end in abortion. We've killed an entire generation of people. There's been 40 million abortions in the United States. Out of that 1/3 that abort, that leaves 2/3 of these teenagers who are raising kids. And they're no more older than kids themselves. Currently, the largest consumer of internet porn are young people ages 12 to 17. The average age of first internet exposure to pornography is 11. The porn industry is actively marketing to our youth. They're seeking to destroy healthy sexual relationships and marriage, and they're generating $57 billion a year in the process. On the internet, all over YouTube, have you seen it? The Blasphemy Challenge? Kids by the millions uploading videotapes of themselves blaspheming the Holy Spirit, acknowledging it's an unforgivable sin. They sell their soul in exchange for a DVD. You know, I looked it up on the internet yesterday. The hits are now 5,345,000. And those are just some of the highlights of the things that the youth that this nation face every day. And maybe some of these statistics have bored you, or maybe you're shocked, or maybe you're wondering what you can do to help, or maybe this information has made you feel depressed about the future of this nation and the church, or maybe you're sitting here thinking, I don't know what the big deal is. They have to face the same issues that I faced as a kid growing up, and I turned out okay. But if you think that they face the same issues that we did growing up, you're sorely mistaken. A battle is raging at a proportion that we didn't know as kids for the minds of our youth. Satan is working overtime and hitting them with everything he can muster, knowing that his time is short. For the first time in history, we're looking at, as I said, 4% Bible-believing Christians in this nation. For the first time in history, we're looking at media saturation of sex, violence, cursing, glamorization of homosexuality, and other morally corrupt behavior. For the first time in history, we're looking at sexualization of our society. For the first time in history, we're looking at point-and-click porn. For the first time in history, we're looking at homosexuality being encouraged and openly glorified. For the first time in history, we're looking at gay marriages. For the first time in history, we're a materialistic, demanding, impatient society who doesn't even know the meaning of the word no. Many of the drugs that are coming out today are far more potent and dangerous than the substances that were used back in the 1960s and 1970s. As I'm a nurse, I don't know if any of you know that, but I just heard about a drug that's coming in from Canada. It's a form of ecstasy, and it's been killing kids with the first dose. For the first time in history, governmental control is increasing to a stifling level. Our basic human rights are disappearing. We no longer have a say in the things that affect the lives of our kids in school. They can get condoms, they can go get an abortion. We can't say a word about it. Our education system is more concerned with pushing a liberal social agenda than they are teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Right.
There's no right and wrong anymore. There are no moral absolutes, and the suicide rates are dramatically increasing. So we have three choices. We can do something, we can do nothing, or we can continue to do what we're doing, which is not working. So maybe some of you were thinking when I started this message, we have to be crazy to have that many teenagers running in and out of our house. But like I said, God has this uncanny way of preparing us for ministry even when we don't know what he's doing. And the Lord taught me over the past 17 years that the enemy is no longer interested in ruining kids' lives. He's no longer interested in ruining their week, their day. He wants to take them out